Hi, everybody. Professor Ken here. Today, I'm going to talk about what I call the three magic words of fiction writing. And I really hate to do this because I'm not a fan of like trying to convince writers that there are special words and secrets and shortcuts to writing a novel. However, I think these three magic words can get you in the right mindset to approach the middle of your novel, especially. And one of the things I've been trying to emphasize with a lot of the videos I've been making is a lot of the hardest parts about writing is making sure that you're thinking about writing in an appropriate way, which is why I try to encourage students not to think about word counts a lot of the time. When I'm working one-on-one with writers, a lot of the time I'm trying to ask questions about like how they developed a character, how they thought through and plotted a particular sequence of events. And these three magic words get to the meat of a story, and these three magic words are very, very good at sort of getting you in the headspace to make you as creative as possible. Okay. So just a quick warning. I didn't come up with these three magic words. If you want some more of a reference to this particular concept, there's a really good documentary by Orson Welles called F is for Fake, or F for Fake, I think. It's a fantastic documentary. He actually talks about this in depth from a cinematic perspective. There's also a YouTube video by a creator called Every Frame a Painting, and he also talked about this from a more cinematic perspective. I'm gonna put links in the comments section because I think it's a great resource. It's a fantastic resource if you're more interested in visually understanding this and seeing how this works in movies too. So let's get started. Let's talk about the first magic word. And the first magic word is therefore. Okay? And the reason therefore is a magic word in storytelling is because it always implies some sort of interconnectedness between two things. Okay? Namely, if we're thinking of therefore in the most pure rhetorical sense, therefore implies the existence of a connection between two events, right? So I injured my foot walking, therefore I went to the hospital, right? A person discovered a dead body, therefore they called the police, right? Those types of interconnected events is precisely what makes them valuable to a story, okay? And so if you think about the sequence of events that takes place in your novel, if you're plotting out your novel, you should be able to, if you're using bullet points or slashes or numbers to sort of organize your events or organize your chapters or however you do it, you should be able to put the word therefore essentially after every single sentence in your outline. So if something happens, the next thing that happens in your story should be a response to that previous event. You should be able to put therefore at the beginning of that sentence, and it should still make sense, okay? If it doesn't make sense, most of the time, it's because something about your sequence of events is useless to the story, all right? So when you think of the word therefore, always think of it as this special word that helps you get in the mindset of thinking of your story as a sequence of interconnected events, okay? That's a really important concept. I spent a lot of time talking about it in one of my previous videos. I used the phrase because of that instead of therefore. They both work. The phrase because of that is a phrase that is very popular with Pixar creators. They have their own storytelling sequence that they came up with. that's way better done than this one. But it's mainly storytelling from a cinematic perspective, and they use the phrase there because of that to sort of indicate that there's this interconnected sequence of events that takes place in a story. Okay, so that's magic word number one. All right. The second magic word is but. And because I am still a child at heart, and I'm also pretty immature from time to time, I'm going to change that word to however, because if I keep saying the word but, I'm going to start giggling uncontrollably. Okay, so I'm going to use the word however instead. So let's talk about the word however. What does however mean in the context of a story? And 99 times out of 100, however, throws a wrench in the gears of a story. So, for example, if your main character, if your protagonist arrives at the crime scene and they find a piece of evidence that contains a list of names, this might seem like a really good clue for the protagonist. However, two of the names were written in ink and the ink is smudged, and the protagonist can't figure out whose names those are, right? If you're writing something in another genre, using the word however in your outline helps you essentially intensify the challenges that your protagonist faces. Okay. So if you're going through your rough draft, or you feel like you're not quite there yet and you're just kind of putting together an outline, using the word however, like going into your outline as you're looking at it and thinking about how can I inject the word however into this part that feels like it's moving a little slowly. What you're actually doing is you're getting in the mindset of thinking about how you can challenge your protagonist. And if there's one thing I've been trying to really stress in a lot of the videos I've been making, it's that your protagonist must face challenges. And the more challenges you throw at your protagonist, the more the more antagonists arise in your protagonist's life, the more interesting your protagonist will be. And oftentimes, the more we as writers will empathize with them as well, okay? So use the word however as a way to intensify conflict. Use it as a way to make your protagonist's life more difficult. Use it as a way to throw a wrench into the gears of the status quo, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to happen to your protagonist specifically. You could conceivably, so for example, I've been reading this really good book, and one of the things that happens in the book, sort of midway through, is the people who are on this spaceship start to realize that the spaceship is breaking down over time, and they have to fix it. And this creates a new set of conflicts between some of the people who are awake on the spaceship, and some of the people are in cryosleep. And as the spaceship continues to break down, they have to essentially address this challenge. And as if that wasn't enough, a little bit later on, in addition to the spaceship breaking down, one of the leaders of this group of people that live on this spaceship one of the leaders is actually kind of going a little crazy. So that's throwing a wrench into the gears of a status quo that was already interrupted when the ship started breaking down. All right. So, however, is a fantastic word to use to get you into the mindset of really emphasizing the principle of antagonism. All right. We're going to talk about the last magic word, but I'm noticing that something is going on outside, and I've got to double check it real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, we're just, we took a little detour outside. As you can see, I have successfully managed to get one of the giantest bulls on the farm back into their pen. He was out, and now he's back in. So, crisis averted. Man, is he huge. All right, the bull is back in the pen. We are back in my office. Where were we? As if this entire thing wasn't planned, right? The last word, the third magic word, is meanwhile, and it's going to become your best friend as a writer. The word meanwhile implies that we are going to cut away from this particular scene and move to another scene where the story is going to continue. Okay. Now you see this in movies really easily. You see this as the director or the editor of the movie, moves us from scene to scene in the story, because oftentimes movies have a limited runtime. Or even TV shows have a limited runtime. You'll see that they'll move away the moment the scene is done, the moment the story has finished progressing in a particular scene. We don't stand around and we don't sit around and watch the actors continue riffing on a particular moment. We don't typically see them sleeping, right? Unless it's important to the story. We don't see them using the bathroom. We don't see them doing a lot of stuff between the scenes, right? That's intentional. We do that in novel writing too. We do that in novella writing. We even do that in short story writing. We want to move to where the action is or to where the story is going to continue progressing. A lot of times for you, this is going to mean thinking about when to end a particular chapter. And what you want to focus on when you're thinking about that is, when is the scene over? When is the story no longer progressing? And then where am I going to go next? Okay. And the meanwhile, as a sort of magic word that you keep in your head, will allow you to essentially move your story from scene to scene. Okay. So if you take these three magic words together, what you have is you have this mindset going into the plotting of your story and the writing of your story, where you're always thinking about, okay, every event has to be interconnected, right? Everything that takes place in my story, there has to be a logical progression from scene to scene. There has to be a logical progression from chapter to chapter, right? And then you think of the word however, and that is the word that throws a wrench in the gears of the status quo, right? Prevents things from staying normal for too long. The word however essentially ups the stakes. And then the word meanwhile allows you to think about how long to spend with your characters, or how long to spend in a particular scene before moving to the next part of your story in order to keep the story moving. So this isn't some sort of super secret thing. It's been studied and taught for a long time, but it's something that I think a lot of fiction writers forget about. And I honestly believe, if you keep these three words in your head, especially when you're plotting out your rough draft, especially when you're thinking about an outline, it's going to help you fill in those gaps that a lot of writers struggle with. And it's going to help you a lot with writer's block. Okay. So as we move forward, I'm going to create a couple more videos to help us think about Act 2. And then we're going to move into Act 3. And then we're going to talk about editing. And then ultimately what we're going to do with this video series is we're going to actually move into how to actually submit stuff to agents and how to submit stuff to writers. So bear with me, stick with me. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoy this. And don't forget to check out the other videos.